Hello, and welcome. Today I'd like to talk about Arknights Enfield. I was lucky enough to get into the current closed beta, and I also played in the technical test last year. And to spoil the conclusion of this video, I'm very happy with the changes they've made since then, especially in the combat. So I thought I'd make a little video just talking about the combat, how I understand it, and how I think it will play out in the long term, and why I think it'll have a lot of depth to it. Now, starting from the absolute basics, the goal of the combat in Enfield is to deal damage. So to be clear, you can't win by defending an objective until time runs out, you can't kill enemies by pushing them into holes, you do need to deal damage. And this means that we can build up an understanding of how the combat will play out by looking at what all the sources of damage are and assessing their viability. So in no particular order, damage comes from basic attacks, arts reactions and bursts, staggers, and skills. So battle skills, combo skills, and ultimate skills. Starting with basic attacks, it's pretty clear that they don't deal enough damage to form the crux of a strategy on their own. At least at the moment, there isn't really support in terms of weapon skills, gear, operator talents, etc. to put basic attack damage at a level where it's viable all on its own. And obviously that's a good thing. If you could win by holding down the attack button, there wouldn't be much point in team building and strategizing. Special mention does go to final strikes though. The DPS is still bad, but final strikes are a consistent source of SP and stagger that you always have access to, and multiple combo skills proc off of them, so final strikes are very important. The next source of damage is arts reactions and bursts. These can be a good source of damage if you can generate a lot of them, like Surtur ult, for example, can generate, like 5 to 10 of them. But of course, the only way to generate them is with skills, so really arts reactions and bursts are just one way that skills deal damage. After that is stagger. When an enemy's stagger bar fills up, they become staggered and you can perform a single finisher attack. In addition, all damage dealt to them while staggered is amplified. So in a sense, what this means is if a skill does damage and also stagger, then the stagger is kind of still damage but delayed. Once you fill up the bar, you're going to get a bunch of amplification and one big final hit. If stagger is essentially delayed damage, then how do you deal stagger? Well, of course there's final strikes and skills. Physical statuses, and then arts reactions and bursts that start with electric will deal stagger. But of course, physical statuses and arts inflictions only come from skills. So really it's just final strikes and skills. And while final strikes are an okay source of stagger, you're not going to get very much if all you're doing is auto-attacking. So really, stagger is kind of just another way that skills deal damage. So if arts reactions and bursts are just a way that skills deal damage, and stagger is also just a way that skills deal damage, it kind of means that what we're left with is to conclude that the real source of damage in this game is skills. And I think it's worth working through the details to reach that point, because it really bears emphasizing. Pretty much all of the damage in this game is coming from skills. All of the damage, all of the utility, practically everything that you want to do is by using skills. And that matters a lot, because your SP bar is a very important resource, and you don't get much of it. Battle skills cost 100 SP, that's 1 bar of the SP bar, and in combat, natural regeneration takes about 12 to 13 seconds to replenish 100 SP. 12 to 13 seconds is a long time. So okay, battle skills every 12 to 13 seconds, what about ultimates? Well, ultimates are charged by damaging enemies with battle and combo skills. Realistically, that just means there's some number of times you need to use your skills before your ultimate will be charged. In other words, however often you're using skills, your ultimate is going to be usable strictly less often than that. This is why combo skills are so important. If you were only using battle skills and ultimates, then you'd have to wait 12 seconds between each skill and even longer between ultimates. Like 90% of the time, you would have no buttons to press. So when team building in this game, your first and foremost goal is finding a way not to rely on your natural SP regeneration. You need to somehow bridge that 12-second gap between battle skills, and the main way that the game gives you to do that are SP regeneration and combo skills. In other words, you can fill the gap with chains of combo skills that trigger one another, or you can narrow the gap by adding SP on top of your natural regen. This is why, as lots of people have noticed, the combo skill triggers are one of the most important things about any given operator. Instead of looking at how they deal damage, their stats, multipliers, etc., the fastest way to get a feel for how an operator plays is figuring out how they trigger their combo skill, and whether they can restore SP. These two things are the bedrock that defines both an operator's and a team's playstyle. A strong team is one that maximizes the damage it deals within this framework by maximizing their bonus SP and their combo triggers, therefore maximizing the resources they can leverage for arts reactions, stacking multipliers, or any other synergies. So, That's dealing damage. What about taking damage? Well, this is the part that people are kind of complaining about a little more. Right now, your options for damage are to avoid it, mitigate it, or heal it. Avoidance comes in the form of spacing, breaking tracking, and perfect dodging, while mitigation and healing both come from skills and items. All of these options are actually fairly strong right now. So what's the problem? Well, the main complaint is with regard to final strikes. Final strikes are your bread and butter, baseline SP and stagger generation. The quote-unquote problem with this is that final strikes take a long time to set up. You have to commit to holding the attack button for like 4 seconds, which in an action game is a long time. It often means you get hit. And if you dodge, it resets your basic attack string, so you have to start all over again. In other words, the complaint that I've been seeing here and there in the beta Discord and YouTube comments is that dodging shouldn't interrupt your final strike chain. But I think it's good that it does. If you look at this game like it's Elden Ring or Sekiro, it makes sense that you'd want to be rewarded for damage avoidance. I understand. I like those games a lot. But the RPG systems in Souls-likes are pretty flat and uninteresting. Optimizing your build so that you can face tank the boss and kill it in 5 hits tends to have a negative impact on the experience. By contrast, Enfield is clearly trying to emphasize team building, theory crafting, and strategization in a much more deep and interesting way. But if you can avoid all damage solely by leveraging your gamer reflexes, that becomes a deep contradiction that will make many players feel like half the game's systems are pointless. None of this is to say that I think there should be lots of unavoidable damage to force you to use damage mitigation and healing. I think the current system is really good, because you can avoid damage if you need to, but it will often be optimal to choose to take a hit, and that's the key. Because the dodge is in the game, but comes with drawbacks, that becomes an interesting choice that you have to make every time the enemy attacks you. Instead of it being always correct to dodge, or always correct to mitigate, or always correct to heal, it becomes an interesting point of strategy that Hypergriff can continue to build on with new operators, new gear, and new enemy designs. Altogether, my final thoughts are that Enfield seems like it will have a lot of depth to it, especially in the team building. There's lots of different systems at play here, whether it's stacking multiplicative damage modifiers, enemy resistance reduction, using the right damage type for the right enemy, using a variety of different buffs, gear skills, weapon skills, etc., etc. It really does seem like there's lots of levers to pull and a lot of complexity to really sink your teeth into in the team building stage. The combat is somewhat less complex than that, for sure. Essentially, you're designing a chain of combo skills and combo triggers in the team building phase, and then in the fight itself, you're trying to execute that chain without taking too much damage. Like if a combo skill pops up on screen, you pretty much always want to use it. Maybe not right away, but there isn't really a deep decision there. The real meat comes in what battle skills to use and when, and at a high level, I expect it to be something you can essentially flowchart. At least for the current state of the game, I don't think you're going to need to be making a whole lot of on-the-fly decision-making as far as like a multimodal team that has different things it could be doing depending on the situation. Right now, I think, for the most part, your team is going to have an optimal way to deal damage, and pressing buttons in the right order to do that most efficiently is most of what you're doing in the combat. But, of course, that could easily change with new operators and new enemies. Looking at how Arknights has evolved over the years, I really do have a lot of faith in Hypergriff's abilities to keep things fresh and interesting. So I would say, with how things look right now, I'm very excited for Enfield, and I have high hopes for how the combat will evolve.